into a mess. Duterte versus Islamic extremists. And sober spring break. Flooding and mudslides caused by torrential rains have killed at least 194 people in Sri Lanka. Nearly 100 are missing and 500,000 have been displaced. Sri Lanka's military is searching for survivors, and aid has been arriving in the country. But some residents say they've yet to see it. Mudslides are becoming more common in the region as forests are cleared for tea and rubber exports. ISIS has claimed responsibility for 2 suicide bombs in Baghdad that killed at least 31 people during the holy month of Ramadan. The first bomb targeted families breaking fast and exploded just outside a popular ice cream shop. Hours later, a car bomb exploded during rush hour near an office where people were collecting pension payments. The Australian government is introducing legislation that would stop an estimated 20,000 registered sex offenders from leaving the country or getting Australian passports.
This is the strongest crackdown on child sex tourism ever. No country has ever taken such decisive and strong action to stop its citizens from going overseas, often to vulnerable countries, to abuse kids.
The government says existing laws restricting travel for sex offenders are not working. Last year, more than 250 left Australia without permission. Timothy Lohman, the Cleveland police officer who shot and killed 12-year-old Tamir Rice 2.5 years ago, has been fired. Lohman wasn't dismissed over the shooting. He was fired after investigators discovered inaccuracies on his police academy application.
I'm relieved that Lohman is fired, as he should be. He should have never been a police officer anyway.
In the first real test of its long-range missile defense system, the U.S. military successfully intercepted and destroyed an incoming intercontinental ballistic missile. The test comes a day after North Korea conducted yet another missile launch, its 9th this year. In Malaysia today, the 2 women accused of killing the estranged half-brother of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un appeared in court, wearing bulletproof vests. The 2 were seen in security cameras at the Kuala Lumpur airport last February, attacking Kim Jong-nam with a cloth to the face. Authorities say it was covered with VX nerve agent, a compound that the UN considers a weapon of mass destruction. The 2 women say they thought the attack was a prank, but if convicted of the murder, they could face the death penalty. Nothing about the bizarre case seems to make much sense. And in rural Indonesia, the family of one of the 2 accused attackers is still struggling to come to grips with what's happened to their daughter.
Ya dikatain bersalah, nggak mungkin kok, nggak mungkin Bapak minta sama anak saya itu. Kan namanya usahakan mau aja, anak polos kayak kertas masih putih itu anak saya. Ya kertas itu kan polos. Diisi sama yang hitam-hitam.
Tiaisa anak nomor itu terakhir. Umurnya sekarang 25. Si Tiaisa anak yang baik, nurut orang tua dia.
Sama tetangga pun juga orangnya gak suka bertengkar. Gak banyak omong. Si Tiaisa itu.
Siti's parents say she moved to Malaysia to work as a shopkeeper to earn money to send back home.
Taunya anak ibu mah orang masih malam berban telepon nggak bilang apa-apa. Mau syuting mau ngerjain orang katanya gitu. Orang apa itu? Katanya ngituin nyemprot nyolet orang sama apa-apa katanya.
Siti claims she was manipulated into taking part in the murder. She says she was offered $100 to participate in a TV prank video.
Itu doang, nggak ada sampai sekarang lah. Kita udah ada kejadian ini, belum ada yang nelpon. Kalau itu mah taunya yang lihat dari TV doang, nggak ada yang bilangin. Lagi pengajian. Terus ya aja coba nyampe rumah mah lihat aja tuh TV tuh. Si Neng kata si Ite Aisyah tuh katanya ada disangka pembunuhan. Orang juga masih kecil, sekolah juga nggak tinggi, sekolah SD. Boro-boro mau ngelakuin kayak gitu. anak ibu.
Doanya supaya dia dipegang, ditangkap, supaya bagaimana kalau dia dikabur, ya supaya yang kabur-kabur itulah. Supaya dia pulang ke Malaysia, supaya bagaimana caranya sama ya gitulah sama maksud itu.
Ma, Abah katanya saya sini. Sehat-sehat aja. Sholat aja di rumah, di malam sama Abah, sama emak, sama ibu.
The Philippine Army says it's retaken half of the southern city of Marawi from the ISIS-linked militants who seized it 8 days ago, which prompted President Rodrigo Duterte to declare martial law. Since the fighting began, more than 100 people have been killed, and over 80,000 have fled to military encampments or nearby provinces. And the civilians who remain are stuck between ruthless Islamic rebels and a president who openly encourages atrocities against his own people.
Nakakatakot, sir, kasi kasali ako sa nakuan dyan sa
The rebels had been planning a number of attacks during the holy month of Ramadan to earn recognition as a regional branch of ISIS. Bodies of civilians killed by the militants, or caught in the crossfire, were recovered over the weekend. On Saturday, Duterte stepped up his offensive against the rebels.
I am going to create a new division for you. Wala nang qualification. Total, marunong naman kayo magbaril.
Duterte asked Muslim separatists and Maoist rebels, longtime rivals of the government, to join the fight against Islamic extremists.
Practice lang kayo ng kalabit.
There's a growing fear that ISIS-affiliated groups fleeing the Middle East are trying to establish a stronghold in the Philippines. Last week, Solicitor General Jose Calida said that the violence on the island of Mindanao is, quote, no longer a rebellion of Filipino citizens. But Islamic rebels have deep roots in the country. The government has set up checkpoints and curfews to prevent a possible spillover of the fighting. But Isnalan Hapalon, the leader of ISIS in the country, is still at large.
Good afternoon. Historic. With that, take your questions.
Team Trump is back in Washington.
Good afternoon.
And that meant Sean Spicer was back behind the podium, leading the press briefing for the first time in a long time. But it was literally like he had never left. The 8 days the president spent abroad did nothing to tamp down the fires the White House has been trying to put out since before he left town. In fact, with all the news of the widening Russia investigation and slow progress on legislative priorities like tax reform and health care, the situation at the White House might actually be worse. And so today's 30-minute press briefing was essentially the last 2 weeks of the Trump administration condensed into one sitcom episode.
Just 9 days.
The first 10 minutes were Spicer talking about how great the president's trip went, who he met, what he did.
It was an unprecedented first trip abroad, just 4 months into this administration.
But then he opened the floor to questions, and things went right back to where the White House doesn't want them to go. Talk about Russia, Jared Kushner.
Mr. Kushner has volunteered to share with Congress what he knows about these meetings, and he will do the same if he's contacted or connected with any other inquiry.
And that infamous Angela Merkel quote.
Well, respectfully, that's not what she said. So since you're misquoting the chancellor, let me read what she actually said. She said the time when Europe could rely solely on others is somewhat in the past. And as I've witnessed over the past few days, Europe must take its fate into its own hands. This means working in friendship with the U.S., the U.K., and neighborly relations with Russia and other partners. That's great. That's what the president called for.
This first briefing back showed basically every congenital defect of Trump's governing style. The president does something, then he tweets about something else, changing the subject from the first thing. The people the president pays money to communicate for him had 3 days to prepare for this briefing, for all the questions that were coming. And still they were left throwing their hands in the air.
ultimately the best messenger is the president himself. He's always proven that.
Eventually, of course, the whole thing devolved into an argument about fake news. In this one, Spicer was actually right when he quoted a false tweet.
Can you give an example of fake news, Sean?
Yeah, absolutely, Jim. I'll give you an example.
Please.
Sure. Friday, the president was having a great discussion at the G7, and someone from the BBC and ultimately an incoming reporter from the New York Times retweeted that the president was being rude by disrespecting the Italian prime minister.
But he tried to use it to castigate the entire media, another pretty normal Trump tactic. Everyone started arguing with each other, and the briefing ended when Spicer walked out.
In 2010, 2 Los Angeles County police officers entered a backyard shed occupied by a homeless couple, Angel Mendez and Jennifer Lynn Garcia. The cops were looking for an escaped parolee, but they didn't have a warrant for the shed. When the officers pushed open the door, Mendez got up from his bed while holding what turned out to be a BB gun. The officers greeted him with a hail of bullets. Mendez lost his leg, and Garcia, who was pregnant at the time, was shot in the back. The couple sued, and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals eventually decided that even though the shooting itself was reasonable, the officers were still liable because they provoked the shooting by entering without a warrant. LA County and the officers were ordered to pay Mendez and Garcia $4 million. Today, though, the Supreme Court unanimously overturned that decision, ruling that if the shooting itself was reasonable, the fact that the cops provoked the incident was irrelevant. The decision means Mendez and Garcia are unlikely to collect the $4 million. More importantly, it means that going forward, it'll be even more difficult to hold police officers accountable for questionable shootings.
For decades, human beings have played games against computers. At first, computers struggled, but then they started winning.
Watson! What is greed? Yes.
And now they've become so dominant that they're raising doubts about the future of humanity. The latest emblem for existential dread is Google's DeepMind project, which created AlphaGo, an AI program that's become unbeatable at the most complex strategy game on the planet. While the game of checkers has 10 to the power of 20 possible outcomes, and a game of chess has 10 to the power of 40 possible outcomes, Go has more than 10 to the power of 80 possible outcomes. AlphaGo is trained to analyze situations itself by breaking the game down into tiny parts and visualizing all possible moves. Last week, it played the world's best Go player, 19-year-old Kerjia, with the help of a human handler. AlphaGo beat him 3 times, and after doing what it was designed to do, retired from the game.
在这次比赛完之后，在他继续又不停的进步之后，我觉得他对我而言就是100%。
If a system like AlphaGo can learn all the moves in Go well enough to beat a person, then it has the potential to replace lawyers and accountants, among dozens of other jobs. It might be perfect, but it has no way to navigate human politics. The Chinese government banned the live stream after Jia lost the first game. The loss to an American company was an attack on the country's pride.
The Chinese government has made a big effort to proclaim that they are moving ahead rapidly in artificial intelligence, that they will be the people who dominate AI. To have the dreaded Google come in and beat China at its own game, it's just piling insult on top of insult. It's kind of amazing.
But it was more than a national crisis.
对我而言就是对围棋的上帝。阿尔法狗出现之后，可能真的我对人生啊，包括不是仅是围棋啊，对人生啊也有巨大的一个改变和看法。
On Memorial Day weekend, hundreds of young Mormons converged on Duck Beach on North Carolina's Outer Banks for their version of spring break. But they're not there to party or hook up. Most of them are on a mission to get married.
You probably will not see a dude who's over 6 foot around here who's single. He already snapped up.
This is actually pretty normal.
This is of at least in DC, what the number
3 to 1
is of girl to guys.
Take those odds every
in the Mormon
single time.
community.
There was one year I came down with a couple of my girlfriends, and the 3 of us spent all our time together. There was another year I came, and I was only here for the weekend, and I had 48 hours, and all I wanted to do was meet guys.
And we know people that have gotten married from meeting here.
Yeah.
We call it a Duck Beach miracle.
At my old job in DC, I tell people, so I'm going to Mormon spring break. And they're like, Mormon spring break?
Yeah.
They're like, what on earth is this? So I tell them about it, and they would crack up, like, we got to go and check this out. I'm like, it's really not quite what you think. Like, it's a bunch of people on a beach, not drinking.
Nobody's drinking, but everyone's getting wild. They're dancing, they're jumping in the pool, they're jumping in the hot tub.
Butter is just oozing into each of those crevices. Okay, let's pop this in the oven.
The chicken.
There we go.
I mean, you have in good years, maybe upwards of 1,000 like single Mormons converging. I think for some people there's an expectation or hope of like, okay, maybe we'll meet somebody. And I actually, truth be told, I've had dozens of friends meet their spouses here at Duck over the years. You're raised like looking forward to the day you get married in the temple. And so when you're older, you're like, okay, what's going on?
I think it was just an appealing idea that like you could come in and meet people from all across the country that were like, that shared the same ideals as you, shared the same faith as you. And so it was whether or not you met like someone that you'd fall in love with or just meet friends.
I took very, very seriously my need to go to college and to prepare for a career. And now I've entered a career and I'll be advancing with graduate school. But also, my greatest desire is to be a wife and a mother. And I want that more than anything. Our dearest Father in heaven, we're so grateful for this day. We're grateful for the opportunity we have to be together as friends. We're so grateful for all the many blessings that thou hast given us. And we say these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
It's fire. Oh, shit. That was sick. I'm digging this one. This is dope. It brings me back. It sounds like something I used to put out on Dimmock back in like 03. Tight jeans, no shirt on, long hair, probably cuts all over his chest from scratching himself from going crazy on stage.
Black lips.
Black lips. Dope.
Does it take you a long time? Does it make you upset?
Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. That voice is so recognizable too. Okay, is it a girl? It's a girl. Definitely something you use in a rom-com. It's the part in the rom-com where you start smiling, you're all happy. Happy vibes.
Blondie.
It's Blondie. Wow. How did I not know that was Deborah Harry's voice?
Another one.
So wavy. The lineup on this song is crazy. Chance, Quavo, Bieber, Lil Wayne. Khaled's on a roll, man. He just doesn't stop. He's every hit. He's got a hit back to back to back. It's unstoppable. I love this girl's voice. She's definitely got this accent that I can't place.
Mr. Wives?
Mr. Wives? Never heard of them. Where are they from?
New York.
They're from New York? The fuck?
Hope you had fun. You got a lot to discuss on the bus headed back where you're from. So say goodbye and hit the road. Pack it up and disappear. You better have
Linkin Park. See, when you hear this, you're like, something's bursting out of you, you know? It's like, it's definitely, the whole emo core era comes back to me, you know, when I listen to these lyrics and the way that Mike's flowing and he's building this tension and Chester comes in and soars his vocals out. I love Linkin Park, man. Fuck.
Pack it up and disappear. You better have some fun. So say goodbye and hit the road. Pack it up and disappear. You better have some fun. So say goodbye and hit the road. Pack it up and disappear. You better have some fun. So say goodbye and hit the road. Pack it up and disappear. You better have some fun. So say goodbye and hit the road. Pack it up and disappear. You better have some fun. So say goodbye and hit the road. Pack it up and disappear. You better have some fun. So say goodbye and hit the road. Pack it up and disappear. You better have some fun. So say goodbye and hit the road. Pack it up and disappear. You better have some fun. So say goodbye and hit the road. Pack it up and disappear. You better have some fun. So say goodbye and hit the road. Pack it up and disappear. You better have some fun. So say goodbye and hit the road. Pack it up and disappear. You better have some fun. So say goodbye and hit the road. Pack
That's Vice News Tonight for Tuesday, May 30th.